Yo, too, I got a major problem, man.
What happened?
Yo, you know how I moved out to the farm a few years ago?
Yeah.
Man, it's an old rinky-dink house. The roof is falling apart. Siding's coming off the wall. Man, you got anybody I can call?
Actually, I know exactly the person for that, for roofing and siding, and they can do your house, residential and commercial work.
Really?
Yeah, they're called Herizon Builders. They're started by local Hmong guys here in the Twin Cities, and they're your go-to guys.
Really? Hmong owned too?
Hmong owned, Hmong operated, and bringing value to Hmong people when it comes to reconstruction.
Hey, that's awesome, man. Yeah, because this is something I definitely don't want to DIY.
All right, so I'll get you the number, Herizon Builders.
Yeah, please do. So if you guys have any work that needs to be done on your residential house or commercial building at all, make sure you hit up Herizon Builders. They're a newer company, and they're out there doing a lot of great work. And we're very grateful for them for sponsoring us and just allowing us to kind of continue the work that we're doing here. So thank you. Reach out to us. Welcome to the Nonke Podcast. Today we have a really highly anticipated guest. We have MYX After Dark / MYX. She has a huge YouTube following, so thank you for blessing our small show with your presence here today. And so with MYX After Dark, you do scary stories and scary stories specifically to the Hmong community. And I had so many questions for you today, just because I feel like the genre of scary stories is like a huge podcasting genre, and then to double up on that, in the Hmong community, we're very spiritual, and so dancing of Da and stuff is very intriguing, and so you have a huge following. What are your numbers at now?
Gosh, I haven't even looked on YouTube. I am nearing 10K, which is my goal. Dang. It's taking forever though, to be honest. But I'm not there yet. I think I'm at closer to 9. But my goal is 10, and it's taking forever to get there.
Wow. Yeah. A lot of your subscribers, are they listening? Because we have subscribers, but they're not always tuning in all the time. Do you find a good percentage of them are tuning in to every episode?
I do see a lot of them, the ones that comment at least. I would never know if they come back to listen or not, but at least the ones that comment, they're from the same people each time, and they're looking forward to it. Or if I take a break and I don't release an episode for a while, they'll be like, hey, welcome back. We really missed you. I'm like, wow, thanks.
So you have a real community then.
I would like to think that I do.
Yeah.
I think you certainly do. I mean, with close to 10,000 subscribers, that's close to 10,000 subscribers is some work. Because I think, tell us, you started this in what year?
I started in 2020, so right before they closed us down, which I think is a really, really good time to start, actually.
Yeah, the pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, and how did you get started? Was it a full idea that you pondered on for 6 months, or was it hey, let's do this, and then one video, and then now let's make it better. Oh, people are listening. Let's do it better. Did it start that way, or was it planned way ahead?
Yeah, I did take a few months to plan it, but it spurred from me taking a trip to California. So I did a road trip with my husband, and we did a 3-day trip. So we kind of drove, stayed a night. And during that road trip, all I did was listen to scary stories because it kept me up, and that's just kind of what I liked. And I think I exhausted all of the scary stories because I was like, oh my God, they're all the same now.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was that constant search for the most scariest story I could find. And so then it just got me talking to my husband about different stories that we personally had. And that was when I realized wow, gosh, I didn't know I knew so much, so many things about Hmong culture, Hmong spiritual culture, that type of things. And then it wasn't until he was like, hey, why don't you just start a podcast? Yeah. And I was like, I'll think about it. And then I guess thinking got to doing got to releasing. And
that's how all great ideas start, right? Everything just starts.
But I always love hearing the beginning of someone's story. What made you start, right? Yeah. Because everybody's different. Sometimes you get people that plan it for years before they hit that let's go. And then some people just let's go and just figure it out. And I mean, we always figure it out a little bit on the path, but
Yeah.
it's just cool to hear that you started it like that. And did you start it with did you buy a bunch of equipment to start off with, or did you just record off your phone?
I
Or
didn't. So I had friends who were musicians.
okay,
That's kind of my background too. And so
really?
they lent me their mic, and I kind of stole it.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of
You
stole
still
it
have
from
it,
him.
huh?
I still have it.
you're borrowing long
Just
term.
like,
Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah.
And then eventually they're like, you could keep it.
Yeah.
But I was like recording out of my closet because
Mm.
as a musician, you know that like that's kind of like your most filtered space for sound, at least, because your
Yeah.
clothes are like filtering the sounds for you. So that's where I started.
Really?
I
Is
was
that
in my
why?
closet. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because like a lot of home studios are
They're in
done in there.
closets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they
Okay.
have like padding and stuff like
Yeah.
that so that you could filter out
I always
sounds.
think about that because here it's such a large space. Thankfully, we're speaking on mics,
Yeah.
but I always listen for that in like when I was post editing the other
Uh-huh.
video. I'm always like, am I hearing something in the background?
Yeah.
I do think podcast mics are a little different from like studio mics.
Yeah.
Really?
A little. I don't know what, but
I think they just capture
when you
audio a little
hear
bit
it.
differently, the wavelengths of audio.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I had to learn how to like mix my own things and master my sound and stuff like that. So I did it like I was a musician. Like I recorded and then I fixed it. Whereas for podcasting, I feel like you kind of mix it, like, because there's a whole mixer ready for you
Yeah.
already.
Well, we
Yeah.
kind of don't really
Yeah,
understand.
we don't-
we don't
we,
really
uh,
understand
Oh, you're
that
good.
thing.
Maybe you can school
We
us
just-
on
we just
some
know-
of these buttons.
Yeah, we know red button
I
record and red
YouTube.
button record. That's
Yeah,
as far as
that's
we
like
know.
the two buttons we use. Like there, we know there's like little sound bites recording that we can hit, but like we don't even know what they are, so we haven't even used it. Okay, but yeah, so like your videos, we'll get into like the scary story stuff, but like your videos, since we're kind of on the topic, like your production value is incredible. So you obviously mix and master your own videos. You add audio to it. Like, how long is that process?
Oh my God, such a long time. I think my very first episode, it's also my favorite, but it's also like kind of the episode where I'm like, don't go there anymore because
Yeah.
it's your first. But I really took a long time adding sounds, making sure that it doesn't overpower your voice, because I needed my storytelling to be like the main thing there, like
Yeah.
the piece of meat there. It takes me a long time. It takes me now it takes me like maybe 2-ish days.
Wow. Dude, yeah.
Two-ish days for how big a piece of content?
So,
that 10,
like,
10 to 20 minutes?
I would say like 20
Okay,
minutes.
so 2.5
because
days for that. That's a lot of effort.
for me at least, like I still have to look through the story. I still have to edit the stories. I have to take out parts that, I don't want on air. And then I get to recording. After recording, you have to fix it. After fixing it, you have to like do the artwork for it. And it's a lot. So
Yeah.
I don't even know how people do like video. I cannot add that to mine. It's just not gonna work for me.
Yeah. We
It's a lot of work.
fortunately like we have a third party that just like links up our video and our audio.
Yeah.
And so, but like we try not, because like they're just kind of volunteering their time. We try not to like burden them too much with too many asses. But they just link up our video and our audio. So shout out to Sweet Flower
Yeah,
for doing
thank you.
that. Yeah.
And I think too, if you're like because it sounds like you're kind of fairly meticulous about how you go about it, which is great.
am.
So I feel like if you edit video, now you got to think of that many more things. Like,
Exactly.
what's my studio gonna look like? What I want it to present like? Does it match like what my podcast, my stories are like? So it
Yeah.
does add an extra thing. You got to think about, like, we're lucky that we just kind of shoot it here and it kind of works. But like,
Yeah.
we think about that too. Like, do we make a dedicated podcast? Because after a while you're like, oh, now people actually are listening, so maybe
Yeah.
we should put some effort into our background and stuff
Yeah.
like
Right.
that. So
Maybe
I feel like
another
for you it'd be
camera.
a huge extra
Yeah,
ask.
Very type A.
I think you'd enjoy it. I think you'd enjoy it though, just to like show.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But I think it'll take too much time.
It would.
Yeah.
It's a
definitely.
time commitment.
Now, does your husband play a role in this at all, or?
He does. I tell him the stories before I
Okay.
actually record it, and he gives me feedback, or he might give me advice on like how I should rearrange the story.
Okay.
because I try to make the story interesting. I try to make it like if there's a potential surprise ending, I'll try to make it a surprise ending.
Okay.
And so he does play a huge role in my storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where are you getting all these stories from? Like, are you just drawing from personal experiences, people's stories, or are you just finding them somewhere?
Season 1 is very like just from people I know.
Okay.
Because that's just where you start. You start from home. And then season 2, 3, 4, they are from viewers, and so they send stories to me, and I try my best to edit like according to what has been like I don't alter it so much. I try to make sure that their story is still their story.
Right.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I noticed about MYX After Dark and other Hmong, I guess, scary stories is that you do it in English. And most of a lot of the stories are done in Hmong. Do you find that like beneficial, or do you feel like that can that sometimes take away or add to the story?
I mean, I do find it beneficial for me. The goal is to, I have a hidden goal. So the hidden goal is to make sure that other kinds of people, not just Hmong people, listen to the podcast, because I want them to learn. I'm an educator, so I want to make sure that other people get a little gist of our culture as well.
Right.
And I've had other viewers. I especially have mediums who are not Hmong, who are like, they come into the comments and they'll say, hey, like, this is very much like my experience. No one believes me, or just things that like are, because Hmong culture, like the spiritual side of it is really bizarre. And I don't even think it's believable to others.
Yeah.
But it's, you believe what you believe.
Yeah.
And so, I have a lot of people who are just interested, I feel.
Yeah.
It is kind of Hmong stories. So like, I personally grew up fairly separated from Hmong culture. So like, whenever I would hear Hmong stories that are scary, like a lot of them, I'm just like, that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Yeah.
But because I also grew up within the culture, I think they're crazy. But I'm like, I don't discount
Don't
them.
know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't discredit them because maybe one day I'm gonna be caught up in it. So I'm like, but it's. Yeah, so the Hmong stories are just crazy. So let me ask you, out of all the, these are most of these are from personal experience of people that you try to dig from, like what we would consider real life
just
stories.
Season 1 really is. Otherwise, the rest are from the public. So I have not done research on if it's true or not. I just believe that whatever people are telling me
so you
is
just
is
tell
true.
the story.
But how would you know if someone's experience is not real? Like, you know what I mean?
Wouldn't.
But you wouldn't know.
I guess
You
like
wouldn't
your
know.
role isn't to decipher what's
it's
real
true
and what's
or
not,
not.
right?
Right,
It's just to kind of tell the story.
It's the listeners
It's
that have to
content
decide
creation,
for
yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
And so, season 1 you said was a lot of your personal experiences. So, I don't know if I just like I don't know if I've had any paranormal activities, or unless I just block them out from my head. So like
Sleep
is that happening
paralysis.
to you a lot?
Sleep paralysis.
I think
Because sleep paralysis can be quite common.
Yeah, I think I've had an experience with that, but like I said, I think a lot of that stuff I just block out of my head. Look, I'm not a scary movie, I'm not a scary, like I'm not into the genre at all.
Favorite scary movie of all time for you?
I haven't watched a whole lot. So the last one I've seen was like Insidious.
Okay.
But that took a lot out of me and my wife. We're not fans of scary movies. We try to watch it, and we get to like the first like 20 minutes, and then we're like, once it starts like picking up, we're like, let's shut it off and watch something else. So like, I'm not a fan of like the genre at all. So I do apologize. I have tuned into a few episodes just to kind of prep for this, but like once it picks up, I don't. Yeah. How about you guys? You guys have
Favorite
a
scary movie? Top 3.
Oh man, top 3. The first
Or top
one,
one.
I think I'll just do one because that's the only one I always tell people to watch. Coming soon, the Thai. It's a Thai.
The
movie.
Thai one, yes.
It's really old.
Yes.
You can't really find it. You gotta like.
I've seen that one. Yeah. Have you seen that?
But
No.
it's really creepy.
Oh yeah.
That's the one when they're in the movie theater, they're like shooting a movie, right? And then just,
What's it called?
It's called Coming Soon.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look for it. I'm
That's
sure my
my
wife
favorite-
has
that's my
seen it.
favorite,
100%.
at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was really good, and I think that was like one of those movies that I was like, all right, after this, I'm good.
It's
I don't
just
need to
a
watch
really
any more of
creepy
these.
movie overall.
Let me ask you, scary movie wise, are you more into the spiritual stuff or the like mystery killer stuff or the monster stuff? Some people like the
yeah.
monster stuff, you know.
So I have exhausted all of the movie categories, but I think my favorite would be the psychological thrillers.
Okay.
I just like to analyze people.
Something
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like you're like that could have like that potentially
Could
is
be real.
happening or could be happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's that's more twisted.
Yeah,
It's
really
more
is,
twisted,
Yeah.
which is a lot scarier. Like
Yeah.
like a Scream, for example. It's like, oh, scary guy on the loose with a mask on.
Yeah.
You
And he's
don't
got
go
a knife.
toward him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like Halloween. It's like, oh, yeah, another degenerate with a mask on.
Yeah.
Although I will say that for me, my favorite scary movie is It, the first one.
Oh, okay.
Because I saw that when I was 6, and it was just one of those things that always put.
Six.
Yeah, I was
Crazy.
6, and I watched
Yeah.
It, and I was like, clowns after that was never the same.
Did you
know.
watch it like this? Because I
Yeah.
sure did.
Yeah, I just know that it was never the same. After I saw that movie, I was like,
Yeah.
clowns are never the same. That, Pet Cemetery 2, so Stephen King stuff, and then I always liked Exorcist stuff. I don't know, because it just seems pretty twisted.
I
Yeah.
have never seen The Exorcist.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There's
I
a
think
lot
I'm
of
too
them.
scared to
There's a lot of
watch
them.
it.
There's
I-
this scene in there where the girl's walking backwards, like her
Yeah.
back twisted down
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
stairs,
that
and I
seems
always
scary.
imagine, like, yeah, if you saw that, like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
run.
I think about that. Like,
Yeah.
what would you do if you saw that? Do you think you'd just go and kick it, or you'd run? Because I always think about that.
I would like to think I would go and kick it, but I think realistically, I
Yeah,
would just
realistically,
run.
I would
Well,
run.
I'd
I
probably
would
just
run.
freeze. I'd probably freeze and let the monster, like, get me. But like, I can't do that just because like the scary spiritual stuff. Like, to me, like, I don't know. I grew up like in the church, so anything with like church and religion is like extra scary to me. Like
Yeah.
You can't
demonic
run away.
possessions and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
that stuff really freaks me out. Like I guess the psychological thrillers I can watch just because like, the monster is just a person.
Right.
So like that's not as bad.
Really?
But like
I'm the
when it comes to
opposite.
demons
That
and
psychological stuff,
oh,
is crazier to
man.
me, because I'm like, that's very likely happening or possible. You know,
Yeah.
6.5 billion people on Earth.
Yeah.
For sure, there's people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me so let me go back. I saw that you also covered something that was like more of a murder story, like the wasn't it with the Hmong lady that like was
Yes.
it the one that committed
God.
that killed her children or
Yes,
something?
yes.
Yeah.
Now her name is like slipping my mind right now.
That's okay.
But,
Yeah.
but yeah, yes. So my audience also likes.
Yeah, you
those-
crossed
those
over kind of
crime
between
things.
the scary stuff
Kind
and then
of.
like
the true life like crime
Murder,
things
yeah.
happening
Yeah.
to you.
Because that's another big genre.
That's
a
in
huge
podcasting
genre.
space.
yeah, and it's very interesting too.
Yeah,
'Cause it's
it
pretty
is.
dark.
It is. It is. But that story is crazy. My sister actually helped me write that story because she wanted to do her own podcast. But then eventually she was like, "Here you go." Like,
Can you
take-
give us a
take
quick
over.
briefing of the story for the people
Yeah.
who have not heard of the story?
Sure. Oh gosh. Now I feel like I gotta go
It
look up her
w-
name.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, we don't have, but,
but-
just a gist of the story.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, what happens is she. There's a lot of different views on it, depending on where you stand as a person. But essentially, basically, she is going through some life crisis, some trauma and things like that. It seems like her husband was abusing her. They had a lot of relationship troubles. They had 6 kids. And one day she just couldn't take it anymore and she wanted to take her life. But then like as a mother, you also worry about your children. You worry about whether or not your husband could take care of your children, whether people could take care of them. So her thought, for me at least, her thought behind her killing her children was her trying to also free them. And so
Yeah.
she was successful. And she tried to kill herself afterward by hanging.
By hanging herself,
Yep.
right?
But it didn't work because the cord snapped, and she kind of just lay there lifeless,
Yeah.
had to call for help. And in the end, she got charged for
Yeah,
it.
Was
she's in prison.
recent?
No, that's
It's a
like
long
early
time ago.
2000s or late 90s,
Okay.
and that was
Uh-huh.
in St. Paul.
Okay.
Yeah.
And St. Paul Fire went to it, and I
That's
always
crazy.
I always think to myself, because I was a firefighter in St. Paul,
Yeah.
had I been working at that right time, right moment, which was much before I got on the job, but that's like one of my worst fear. Like imagine walking into a house with 6 dead children. And so real life story, I think there's a lore to the story because
Yeah.
it's so extreme, but it's
Pretty
just
dark.
yeah, real, like as a real first responder, like that's a real thing that
Yeah.
you could walk into as well. But yeah, I heard that story, and the suicide attempt was I always I'm kind of sadistic, so I'm like, oh yeah, that didn't really work out for her, the part where she's
Yeah.
trying to commit suicide. But yeah, the story as a whole is very
Uh-huh.
very dark, and I'm sure within the community, the Hmong community, Hmong people, we love to all come to a conclusion of our own, you know. And so I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a lot of different scenarios people have played about what might
Yeah.
be happening,
Yeah.
or you know, like if you're really religious on the Hmong shaman side, you might say like she was maybe possessed by something bad,
Right.
and if you're more of like the empirical scientific person, you'd be like,
Right.
yeah, it sounds like she had like psychosis, you know,
Right,
like
some kind of mental
someone
health.
finds a
Things going on.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's
Yeah.
tuning for a reason.
So,
Right.
question for you, like, so when you cover these stories that are very close to our community,
Uh-huh.
and it's like like it's a real like it happened.
Yeah.
Like, how do you navigate that? Just because, like, you know, there's always like, I mean, that someone's cousins, that's
Right.
someone's, you know, like, how do you navigate that? Like,
I stick to the facts. So
Okay.
I just stick to what I can find. I don't really give my opinion out there. I
Okay.
just try to stay neutral. And I let the viewers do their own thinking.
Do you ever
Okay.
feel like you have to have a little bit of an opinion on it?
Sometimes.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
because I think sometimes that's
I
why
am
we
biased.
that's why we watch
Yeah.
the news, or like
Yeah.
that's why the news works, right? Like because the
Yeah.
news has to present the facts, but also
They
have a
present it in a way.
little
Yeah.
bias.
they don't always
right?
present the facts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Sometimes the facts
Yeah.
are
I am a little
stretched,
biased.
but
Yeah.
yeah, because I think that's what would make the podcast for you interesting too, is the story for sure, but then also what does the person narrating the story
Yeah.
think
what do you
about
think?
Like, what is
Yeah,
their spin?
yeah.
What is their
Exactly.
perspective? So when you're writing those out, you're just taking in the facts and just kind of essentially.
Yeah, I think that has been the only story that I've done that has been in the news, though. Like, I've tried to do others, but there's just not enough out there
Yeah.
to like do a full episode at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you also covered yeah, the Mong Lang story about Mong Lang, like non Lang, like
Yeah, Mong
that was
Lang.
like the because I always heard that like growing up.
Uh-huh.
So something like that, which potentially be controversial,
Yeah.
like how do you navigate that? Like,
Wait. Before we go any further, could you just explain what it is?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Mong
Can you
Lang.
Sorry,
just
sorry.
explain
Oh,
quick
man.
briefing
Have you
on what
never
it is?
heard? Oh,
Spoiler
No, I don't
alert.
know. I don't
Okay.
know myself. So let's hear it so that I can
Yeah.
understand your question better
Sure.
too.
Yeah.
So Mongling Nanning, a lot of spoilers here. So if you're trying to listen to that story, don't listen to this part. But basically, there is I want to say rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm going to say rumor. So there's a rumor that a certain pocket of Mongling people eat humans. And so that story kind of investigates where that came from. And so, could I spoil? Or like you're just
Go,
like,
Yeah,
don't
go,
care?
go for it.
Yeah.
Basically, what happens is that there is this, you know how we just have different dialects? And so for Hmongling, when they say Ning, they mean like a horse. And
Okay.
then when they say Tuaning, it means humans. And so these guys from like Hmongdo town, they come to the Hmongling town, and while they're there, the Hmongling folks are like, oh, you know, we're a little busy because they're there to do business. So like we're a little busy, and so you know you got to come back another time because we just killed Ning, right? So we just killed
a horse.
people, right? But
Yeah.
then they're saying horse, and they're saying like, oh, you know, the horse is old and kind of frail, so we're a little busy right now, so you guys should come back another time. And so from there, the rumor went out to other folks saying that like, oh, they're killing people. They do not visit their village, blah, 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 and becomes a whole thing. And yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So now let's
That's
go
kinda
back.
where it
No, let's go back. So
Okay.
your question.
Okay. I didn't know that part of the story. I didn't know.
There's a lot of different stories, but
Yeah.
that is the one that I like the most.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I chose to tell
I mean,
it
yeah,
that
yeah.
way.
That would make
Yeah.
the most sense without like essentially just demonizing a whole
Yeah.
group of people, right? Because like, well, the myth in the story, like growing up, is that yeah, like there's like I guess a group of Hmong individuals
Yeah.
that ate people, and that was always kind of like what they said growing up. And it's just like rumors, but it's just kind of like myth. And
Yeah,
stuff.
something
Yeah,
that you grew up
exactly.
with that
Yeah.
it stores in the back of your mind. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
a way
so
to explain
I'm glad
things.
that was kind of the case, just because like I saw the title and I'm like, oh yeah, like I remember hearing about this as a young kid, like, but immediately in my head I was like, oh, this could be really problematic.
Yeah, my husband told me not to release it actually.
Oh yeah.
Because he was like, are you ready for heat? And I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, you know what? This story is fine. I think you can make what you want of it. You
Yeah.
gotta listen to the whole thing through. And essentially, it's also not my story. And so
Yeah.
it's
Right.
kind of like, it's just a story that's out there. It's no one's story, actually. It's just
Yeah.
like it's been passed down enough where it's like, where did it come from?
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
even
And
know.
stories always get diluted as they get thrown down
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
chain.
exactly.
Yeah. Or they get remixed
Yeah.
Yeah.
to be better.
That's cool because then you're kind of doing investigative work too.
Yeah.
Into like, where did this come from? Because I again, I'm sorry, like I'm not a fan of scary stories, so I didn't listen to the episode. But in my head, like I was just like, oh, this is an issue.
Does it ever get dark? Have you? I imagine that it
yeah.
can get dark depending on how deep you're trying to go down that rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like the best, like a Stephen King, for example, or just anybody that's a producer, creator, director of something scary. My fascination is always where does their mind go, and how dark are they willing to go to create, like Human Centipede. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah. Oh my
So
God.
it's
I think
have
it's
you seen
Yeah.
Human
funny.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I
So
cannot
like
watch it.
when that guy makes that movie, you're like, dude.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like you created something
you
that this
okay?
exactly. So for you that you cover this stuff, does that ever get and you don't have to go too deep into this if
Yeah.
you don't feel like it because it's kind of a personal question, but do you allow yourself to go to these places to try to like
To embellish the story. or
to
it
make your
better.
content
Yeah, yeah.
richer in a way? Not that it isn't, but where do you allow yourself to go on that path, or do you just say I'm just narrating like reading a book, or do you
Yeah.
say let me
Let me put
try
a
to
spin
like
on it.
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
these people?
There are some stories where I'm like, this is kind of messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do take breaks. I tell lighter stories
Yeah.
sometimes. I tell more heavy stories sometimes. But I do allow myself to take breaks and just to like hands off. I'm not gonna do podcasting
Yeah.
this month or this week or this summer. I'm not gonna do
That's
it.
good.
Yeah.
So since you've had it's been 4 years now that you've had this. Let's talk about the creative process and like how much time you put into it. Then, are you pretty rigid with yourself and how often you want to release, or are you like I'll go when I feel like I'm ready to just throw some out there?
I feel like when I started, I used to be. I released an episode once a week, and I
Okay.
was very,
Yeah.
very consistent for about 2 years. And then I had my kid, and then you just whatever goes.
Yeah.
And so I've been kind of for now at least. I've just been like when I have time, I'll do it because
Okay.
it's. I'm kind of like you guys. I remember you telling another person on a podcast once that it's not your career.
Right.
It's just your
Yeah.
passion project. You're not. It cannot take over your life.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
thank you for
So-
listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listen.
No, you're right. It cannot take your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something we struggle with a lot.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And I think there'll be waves, right? I'm sure there's
Yeah.
waves where you're like, let's hammer this,
Exactly.
and then you learn to like, oh wait, no, let's not, and or bits of motivation come and go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And I think it's okay. It's okay to
Yeah,
be like that.
absolutely, and I think we can all share with people that are listening that content creation is like that's why I'm always so fascinated and like really. Like people like yourself, for example, like people who are just doing content, I'm always just like appreciative of the effort they put in because people don't realize because thought process is energy consuming, so
Yeah.
it's just like, oh yeah, that person sat there and thought and created content for all of us, and there's close to 10,000 people that subscribe and say I'll listen to that, so even though it's just a click, but it seems like it takes a lot to get somebody to click
Yeah.
subscribe.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
really
Oh, yeah. We're
does.
learning that
it's
firsthand.
not
yeah.
it's not that easy.
Yeah.
I know when I first started, I made all of my family members like go click subscribe,
Yeah. Oh,
like, share.
dude. Yeah. I definitely do
Right.
that where I'm sending out like, go comment, like help me, like it'll help boost the algorithm.
Exactly,
But yeah, I've slowed down a little bit
You
on
learn
that too.
they're probably not your audience, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How so with with almost 10,000 subs, are you nice and are you proud of yourself, or because that's a lot
That is a lot.
of
Yeah, that's
you're telling
huge.
stories and people are hitting that. I want to listen to that more, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How's that feel for you?
I am pretty proud of myself. I mean, 1,000 when I first got
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
great. I was so happy. I think 5 was the next milestone, and now it's 10. And then the next is going to be a stretch. It's going to be 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, at least.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Just the idea of 100 is pretty
know, but
crazy.
I
that's-
think you get a plaque. I think you get a plaque at 100.
I know.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
You
so
get a plaque at 100. You could put it in.
people ask
on
me
your wall.
when I was going to stop, and I'm like, when I get a plaque,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's when I stop.
Yeah. Just yeah.
Yeah.
So question for you, like, we're seeing a lot of the scary movie genres coming out of like Southeast Asia or East Asia. What is that about? Like, what is our fascination as Asians? Like, because I feel like I just don't know if it's something new. So that's why we're so fascinated as Western consumers. But I just feel like the scary movies made here in like Hollywood or in the West aren't as good as like foreign scary movies.
Yeah, I question that too. I don't know the answer.
Oh, okay.
I question that too, and also like just even like the stories that Western producers have created are they kind of I guess mirror the Asian.
Yeah.
Well, I know
culture
that
too,
the Eye with Jessica Alba was like there's a lot of redos
Yeah.
from like
Yeah.
I question that too. I think just because I think the spiritual side, I think Asians do more of those.
Yeah.
Like those scary spiritual
I think it's
movies.
just how they grew up too. I mean,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
grew up with that.
And I guess maybe the genre here in the West is kind of slowly becoming outplayed or outdone because like you can only do so many exorcisms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There can only be so many possessed little dolls running around, right?
They all become the same.
Yeah, and essentially, eventually they just kind of all intertwine, and so maybe hearing a story from Eastern Europe or like or in Asia is maybe different.
A little bit
You
different
know.
philosophy on
Yeah.
what is considered scary. I was just thinking in my head, Sixth Sense. You guys seen this movie, right?
Yeah.
Sixth
Yeah,
Sense.
yeah.
You guys remember the scene when the grandma comes in after the?
Oh,
Oh no, the
man.
I
guy,
blocked that
the part where the kid's sitting in the car, and then the guy who just had the bicycle accident comes up to his window.
Oh man, it's been a long time.
Oh,
Can I
anyway.
be
But
honest
I
with you?
do like that movie.
I haven't watched that from beginning to end.
Yeah.
I've
That's
seen
okay.
clips on like TikTok now every now and then when they like resurface, but that's about
Okay,
it.
so the point of that is because there's like essentially a spirit that comes in, and the kid's able to see it. So let me ask you this, and I'll ask. It goes to both of you.
Sure.
Do you guys?
Just, like, talking about
yeah.
this.
Do you guys? And I will say that. Not to scare y'all, but this camera here sometimes triggers
Oh,
my
man.
phone with orbs that come into the thing,
Yeah.
and I'm like, and I posted it on my Facebook once, and I was like, "What do you guys think this is?" And some people were like, "Oh, that's just a dust mite," and then some people were
Yeah.
like, "Dude, you gotta do one nang for your place." And like sometimes when I'm here by myself at 6 a.m. and I'm the first one here,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna turn all the lights on, blah blah blah, just to be
Yeah.
sure. But have you ever had a moment, or do you believe in? And that goes for you too. The same question is: do you guys believe in spiritual force of any kind? Because everyone's different. Or if,
Yeah.
like if you're in a setting where you're like, did that just shift over there?
Yeah.
Like, do you think like that, or do you not think like that?
I do. I do, and I think I do. I acknowledge it. Okay, here's my experience with. It's kind of like a funny, scary story, but like when we were kids and camping, and one of the elders would always tell us like scary stories, and I would always like joke about it, and I would always be like, oh, that's kind of stupid, yada yada, and like that night, like. I'm not sure about how much I want to say. Okay, whatever. It's for content. But I was like, yeah. I was like, if I see a scary story, I'm gonna beat, or if I see a ghost, I'm gonna beat it up, and yada yada. And I made a joke like, oh, I'm gonna fuck it, in the ass. And then,
Jesus Christ, you're
Yeah.
dark.
I was
Okay, you
like
getting
a
it.
13-year-old boy. But that night, like, I woke up in the middle of the night, like, super creepy, and like just
This is in the woods?
yeah.
Like, you guys are camping?
Yeah,
Okay.
we were camping, and like, yeah, like, dude, like I shit my pants that night. I was like so scared. Like there was just like a weird ambiance about it. And then like the guy was just kind of like, yeah, like that's kind of what happens when you disrespect the like spirits and stuff. So I was like, oh, so now like I have a respect for it. Again, I just block it out from my head.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
as an adult
Yeah.
now, have
Yeah.
you had any personal situation like that for yourself?
And if I do, like I just try to make sense
Reason.
of it.
You try to reason
I just
it
try to
out.
go, oh, the
Sure.
wind blew that.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, something else went bump in the night, and like, whatever.
Yeah. What about you? Are there any stories that you've had in your life where you're like, what is that? Or
There's a few.
How often do you think about it, when you're by yourself and no one else is home?
I want to say that before I started the podcast, I was kind of like free, nothing happened, but then, or nothing happens to me. But it was like right after I started telling scary stories that I would just, like, you just notice things. I'm kind of the same as Peng, where I like to reason, or I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that was just the wind, or that was like my heater, or something like that. So I try to reason first, but there are just some things where you're just kind of like, I cannot explain why that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'll tell you one. So like once I was doing grocery, and it was just me and my son. We were coming back in, and he was asleep, so he was in the car, and so I was trying to bring groceries inside of my house, and so I just kind of like threw it all up in the inside of the door. And we live in a townhome, so like our door is also like our neighbor is basically right next to us. And so I open the door, and I'm like putting things inside the door. My back is facing towards the outside. And so all of a sudden I hear like a hey, right? And like clear as day is like, hey, right? And I thought it was a neighbor. And so I looked back, and I almost said hey, and I'm like, okay, no one's there.
Oh man.
Was it
I'm
just
getting-
plain day?
Yeah.
It was
Let's
like-
draw the setting some more. Was it nighttime? Was it
It
daytime?
was evening. So
It was
like,
evening, okay.
Kind of like the sun is setting type of a vibe going on. And so that was when I was kind of like, okay, that must be the wind. Like I try to
Yeah.
convince myself that it was
But
the
a
wind. It
voice
probably
is
wasn't.
a voice is
A voice is a
a
voice.
voice is
Distinct,
clear.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
a voice is
yeah.
clear.
I know.
And it's a word. It's not just a sound. It's like a full
Right.
word.
I even thought it
Yeah.
was my Alexa. So I was
Yeah.
like, Alexa, say hey, right? It did not sound like her.
Oh.
And how long did you think about that after that happened?
I still think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because
Did you
you're
move? Are you still at the same location?
I'm still at the
Uh-oh.
same
Yeah.
location.
Uh-oh. Time to move.
yeah,
How about
scary.
you two? Like, how do you see spiritual things? And then, like, have you had any experiences? with it?
Yeah, I'm kind of like you guys. I try to reason everything. I think that's just a safety for my own mental state, right?
Yeah.
To like
Right.
put a reasoning behind something. Same thing like you when I was a kid. I remember like when I was scared and I was laying in bed and I was about to go to sleep and my thoughts were creeping into like scary stuff. I would always just imagine myself like beating up the monsters
Yeah,
and be
yeah.
like, if you beat them up, then
Yeah.
then I'm gonna go to sleep with that thought. One story I do have is, and so there's a fire station in St. Paul, Fire Station 5, that is like 100-some years old.
Yeah.
And people would always, like firefighters would always say that that place was haunted. And that's where I think, like, I don't believe, but I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I was sleeping there one day in one of the rooms, and like, imagine yourself laying in it's an old firehouse. I'm laying in the bed, and then in front of me there's a locker, a tall locker, like maybe a 6-foot locker, where
Yeah.
you just store your gear.
Yeah.
And then above it there's a set of boots. So it kind of creates like this tall shape.
Yeah.
And then I woke up that morning, probably like 6 a.m., and all of a sudden I'm fully locked up. And this locker and boot now all of a sudden looks like shoulder blades and a head.
Yeah.
And it's all black, and it's like, and then, so I don't know if like because people told me it was haunted, and it was
Yeah.
just the stories that
It's in
people
your
were
brain.
right.
Yeah.
So and that was in my brain. But that was like my first experience with sleep paralysis, like legit. Like
Yeah.
I could sense myself being in a awake state with
Yeah.
the inability to move. But it didn't like, like there's two extremes, right? That could happen. I could wake up and be like, that was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my feeling. But I could have also been like, Mom, Dad, picture one thing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Call the
but
spirits. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not like that. So
Yeah.
I was just like, but it was like, oh shit, okay, sleep paralysis, which made me look more into sleep paralysis
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I wanted to understand, because your mind is so powerful that maybe it's just your mind that's
Yeah.
like, you can't move right now,
Yeah.
and that looks like, and because maybe sometimes we've all had those periods where we're half asleep, and like when you're half asleep, your mind can get pretty creative,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
so I didn't say that was a ghost in my
Right,
head. I
right,
said
right. That's
it's
just
definitely
what
sleep.
you tell yourself.
No, it's definitely sleep paralysis. But whether or not I think it's a force
Yeah.
greater than what I understand about life, I'm not gonna go so far to say that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say it was definitely sleep paralysis.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is scary 'cause you can't move.
But sleep paralysis as a condition, because like I think we have different understandings of sleep paralysis, right? Because like I think there's a sleep paralysis where there's a monster that sits on you, right?
Right.
There's like a sleep paralysis, like the sickness that is defined by in medical terms,
Yeah.
right? And so like do you account that as the medical term sleep paralysis or like the like
Combination of
dodge
both.
you?
No, combination of both. I don't disclose either or because I think in my mind I believe that it could be either or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just not gonna get stuck on the idea
Yeah.
of like I'm not gonna make myself scared further by
Yeah.
furthering my thought about like holy shit
Yeah.
that was crazy. But sleep paralysis is an interesting story because in the Hmong culture we hear about it so much.
Yeah.
People always talk
Yeah.
about it, and then different people have different philosophies about what they believe it is. Like I said, like Wonang is a real thing that some people would definitely say like, oh, we got to do this.
Right.
Um,
Well, in your
Yeah.
research, like, and I mean, I'm sure you come across.
yeah, because
this
I
a
know you
lot,
did.
like,
You've done stuff about.
Yeah.
Or posted about that.
Freddy Krueger was created because
Oh, really?
yeah, by Hmong folks.
Makes
actually.
sense.
Yeah.
that makes sense. Wait. I heard a rumor that it's created by Hmong folks. Is it a actual?
It's not created by Hmong folks, but it was inspired by
Okay.
the
Oh,
stories that Hmong
interesting.
folks
Okay.
had. Because I forget what the syndrome is called, but sudden death. Yeah, sudden death syndrome.
Yeah.
Within, they called it like Laotian folks, but then it was like Hmong stories involved. And so like the story is that like they just had sudden deaths. It couldn't be explained. It didn't have to do with the heart or anything, and it was just like people just die in their
Are we-
sleep.
are we talking
That's
about,
where
like,
the idea came
SIDS?
from. Huh?
We're talking about SIDS, the sudden infant death syndrome from.
No.
No, even adults.
No, adults.
Okay,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
adults.
Because I think I remember.
It's like the
reading
unexplainable-
that article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, like, I'm forgetting a lot about it, but that's where it came from.
Well, I think what happened was like I think it was like after coming here to the States, right? Because it happened here, and then
Yeah.
there was like a lot of like Hmong people just randomly
Yeah.
passing
Yeah.
in the middle of the night. I think I remember reading that. But like
Yeah.
something like interesting about sleep paralysis is that it crosses all cultures. Like
Yes.
you know, we
It really
talk
does.
about
Right,
it
right.
in
It
the
definitely
Hmong
passes all
community,
culture, yeah.
But like I think like in Polynesia, like they have their own version of it,
Right.
and I think every culture essentially has like their own story. But the scary thing is like it's all very similar. It's always the same story, and they always describe the same like figure. Oh, I'm having goosebumps. I don't even like talking about this,
Yeah.
but like they always describe like the same
Yeah.
figure that's like
Pressing
guess-
on your chest.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and my reasonable, logical mind says that if all humans experience this, then clearly it must be a
There's-
scientific
there's
reason
some-
that we
yeah.
all
Yeah.
that we all feel this.
or
and-
spirits.
Or some
Yeah.
truth in there.
or some
Yeah,
truth in it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because-
No, absolutely.
Well, then, have you guys ever Google image it?
No.
If you Google image
actually.
it, like all of the images look fairly similar. And then like it when I did it, like I definitely was like, yeah, that's. I don't know if it's just like me trying to, like my mind going, like trying to make it relate, but like when I saw it, I was like, oh, I definitely saw that, you know. But yeah, it's just sleep paralysis is super
always a
interesting
big one.
topic. But I
Yeah.
wanted to talk to you about the firehouse thing.
Yeah.
Like in those old buildings, like I'm not a super spiritual like ghost stuff, but I do think places have memories.
Yeah.
Like walls, like
Yes.
especially if there's like a lot of like craziness, and I just imagine inside a firehouse, like there's probably just, you know, a lot of like craziness, and especially if it's been there for thousands or hundreds of
Yeah.
years, not thousands, but hundreds of years, 100 year, like it's probably some pretty wild stuff that has occurred in there.
Well, I've been inside. I've worked in a lot of ambulances, and obviously I've seen a lot of people die in ambulances. And ambulances,
That's a
I've
crazy statement.
I've had a lot of people.
We're not gonna skip over that.
No, I've seen a lot of people
Yeah.
die in the ambulance in
Yeah.
front of me, and then the ambulance comes into the firehouse, and then you're like, well, if he died, maybe the spirit got stuck in the ambulance, and
Yeah.
now the ambulance is in the building, and we opened the ambulance doors, and maybe it flew. You
Yeah.
know, like it's very possible, but I
Yeah.
just don't think like that. I think my self-defense mechanism tells
Yeah.
me like, don't think like that,
Yeah.
because if I thought like that,
Yeah.
You
I
drive
wouldn't
yourself
be.
crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's
Um,
true.
but I think I haven't had an experience yet. Like the sleep paralysis is one thing, but I kind of just walked right past it and was like, that's intense and it's okay. But I haven't had an experience yet that's really shocked me to the core where I think I'm like, okay, like this is really crazy. I don't think I've had that despite all the violent things I've seen as a firefighter.
Yeah.
I haven't had, like I said, I'm more fascinated a lot like what you were saying about where the psychological part I think is really
Yeah.
crazy because that I feel like could be pertaining to almost all human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know, right?
Yeah.
Like all human beings could have a crazy switch, and it's like a dark thought that I think all humans we all experience and think about. We don't always share it with people,
Yeah.
but everybody knows that, you know, the human mind is just it's flexible. Like people can go kind of nuts. And
Yeah.
do you also are you tapping into more or less? Because I haven't looked through all your stories about like violent crime stuff too. Is that like something of high interest to you, or is this podcast solely more focused on like something that would fall into like a scary horror category,
Oh.
like the
what
violent
are you
crime
trying to
stuff? So violent crime stories and stuff like that. Is that something that you also include in your podcast quite a bit? Because I know the
Yeah.
Hmong woman
Yeah.
thing we just
Yeah,
talked
yeah,
about. So do you have a lot more of those stories too, or is it more horror, spiritual?
I feel like I have more spiritual things
Okay.
than those real life horror stories.
Do those things interest you as well? The
They
real
do.
okay.
Yeah, they do interest me. I do try to pull some of those things in as well, but I get what I get.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like it's essentially your listeners are sending you stories,
yeah.
right?
When
yeah.
Good.
What has been the craziest story that
Yeah.
you've gotten?
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
that one's easy. So the craziest stories for me are always like the ones where it's believable and also like you can relate to
Yes.
it. I have an episode called Mingyonjua, and it's actually a really, really sad story. It's not even scary at all. It's a really, really sad story, but it's scary because those things happen in real life.
Yeah.
This is an older story. It's actually from a relative of mine. And basically, he just tells his life story of him being a Mingyonjo and how he was mistreated when he was little.
Yeah.
And it goes as far as they were so mean to him and his brothers that they didn't really feed them. They fed them like those rice husk, like the shells of the rice.
Yeah.
They had them out in the fields every day. They like whipped the little tiny 2-year-old, had him sleep outside, didn't give him any milk.
Yeah.
A cat had to he survived by getting milk from a mama cat. And so it was like those
Yeah.
types of stories that it just stays with you, and you're just like, oh my God, these stories really, really
Wait, that's his story, or that's a story that he told you about another
That's
somebody?
his story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And this guy is so bold. So I only know about it because he was at a funeral and he kind of spat it out like, hey,
Yeah.
so y'all people sitting right there, you did this to me.
Ooh,
So I know, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. that is
Yeah.
Worth investigating. What's your story? Here, tell it to my microphone.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Even the term like me and Joy, like that's like a real.
Can you
So-
translate that to me? Like
My understanding is that what happened during the war was that there were a lot of orphan kids,
abandoned
Yeah.
kids.
and so then there were if there was an abandoned kid, some families would just take that kid in, and sometimes like they weren't always treated the best.
Right.
Sometimes they
become
were met with a lot of
slaves,
love.
basically.
Right, they're not
But,
their
like,
kid. It's just
yeah.
a kid that I
Yeah.
took
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Especially like during, and I think this was like really big during wartime when we were escaping Laos, and then you would have parents that would die, and their kids would just be left alone in the woods, and then as a passerby, you would just take them on with you, because like there's always like as kids, as kids, there were always jokes about, oh, you're not our real cousin, you're, me and Joel, whatever. And like, it was always like a mean thing to say, but like, it was also a very real thing that occurred too.
Yeah.
And sometimes those kids weren't met with a lot of love, you know?
And so the story that you told was his story about him and his experience
Yeah.
doing
Yeah,
that.
it's his story. Got permission, so I
Yeah.
didn't just take somebody's story. I always get permission. But yeah, it's his story, and it was such a sad story. I'm just like, because like at the time I also had a 2-year-old, or now he's 3, but
Right.
Yeah.
at the time I'm just like, oh my god, I just cannot imagine that happening like to your own child, and
Yeah.
you can't, like you aren't there to help your child,
Yeah.
and anything goes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't want to discredit his story, but
Yeah.
how many memories do you have from
Oh, from being a 2-year-old?
yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
and
think we have any.
again,
But
I'm not trying to discredit.
Yeah.
but
his
the
story or his
like there's got to
experience.
be something, right?
Yeah.
Like just think about it, like you have kids, right? Like let's say you took your 2-year-old I'm not gonna say your daughter, 2-year-old kid. You take a 2-year-old kid, you put him in a weird environment. Certainly,
I mean,
there's a
that's trauma.
psychological.
I do feel like if you're
effect,
in a,
right?
Right. If you're in a like a trauma zone, then
Yeah.
I feel like you would.
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
But this guy was the older brother, so he's telling the story based on him as the older brother of his younger.
Oh,
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
the
so he was
younger ones that he
was-
watched.
He's older
and saw, yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
his story and also like his brother's stories as well, and yeah.
Yeah.
It's
'Cause
kind of
I-
a crazy story.
I know, and I can only speak for myself, but sometimes like, again, not discrediting his story, right? And I'm not trying to discredit anyone's experiences, but like sometimes when we have a certain feeling of when something is like triggering and then we're met with a lot of feelings, like I think sometimes the story can kind of change to kind of fit how we felt at that moment. Do you know what I
I
mean?
get what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like I don't want to be like, hey, like this can't happen. I mean, it absolutely, possibly, yeah, it did happen. And we hear about this stuff all the time. But like sometimes, the story can change a little bit just to kind of fit how we
Sure,
feel
how you have a
about it.
narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's
Yeah.
got some
Yeah.
sort of narrative.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
But
how many episodes have you released, give or take? Do you know where you're at? Like how many different
Oh,
stories
man,
have you
I
covered?
haven't- I've not counted.
Yeah.
I would say over 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when people give you stories, like let's say when you're asking the people that listen to your podcast to contribute to you a story, do you have to dig pretty deep? Because I assume that if you only give me one paragraph, I'm gonna be like,
Yeah,
so
I'm not
basically I
taking
gotta, yeah. If you give me one paragraph, I gotta throw a lot of fiction in there or opinion. Do you often have to dig deeper with these people? Like how long is the back and forth of like? Like, do you have all your questions down? Essentially, I guess is what I'm asking, because you must know what you're asking. Like,
Yeah.
well, give me some timelines, give me some settings, give
Yeah.
me,
I do have some people who send me like just a paragraph. I always tell them like, hey, this is like, thanks for telling me your story.
Yeah.
I read it. Please acknowledge that I've read it, but most likely it will not be in
Right.
an
Yeah,
episode. It's
okay.
just too short. And then there are some stories that are like a page long, and I might say it's going to take a while for it to get out because I need to pair it with other stories that are similar to that
Yeah.
story. So
Okay.
I won't really ask for more unless it's a story that I'm just like, wow, that's really different.
Right.
I need more. I've only done that just a few times, but otherwise, like,
That's a lot of work.
yeah,
If you had to do that all the
I know,
time,
I don't do it all the
that's
time.
a lot of
Yeah.
work.
Have you had a story that was like too crazy to put on the podcast or like too scary?
Oh, yes. So I do have I have a few. So I have one that's been like recorded. This would have been my episode 2, like the very beginning episode 2
Yeah.
story. But the owner of it reached out and was like, please don't put it up. Like, it was recorded and everything, and the owner said no, because it's just really like, it's a really
Real personal story, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I've had one where everyone's waiting for part 2. So like I have it, but then when she sent part 2 to me, and when she sent it, she kind of backed up. She said, never mind, like, don't, things have been
Okay.
happening to me since I sent you that story. Please do not
Yeah.
release it. And so I haven't released it yet.
Yeah.
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 That would be
Patreon.
scary if someone. Yeah.
you
So
gotta
part
pay
2
for
is
the
on the Patreon.
I
It's
know.
only $5.99.
I have it,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
will not release it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I imagine that's got to be scary. Like, I just put myself in your shoes if I was the person, like, hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
And then someone's like, oh, yeah, by the way, this is my story.
Yeah.
And it happened to me. And now I'm like, oh, shit, why'd you tell me all that? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't need to know all that.
Yeah.
Like,
There
I thought
are
it was
some-
fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some stories where, like, I call them my my cursed stories. So I have a playlist under cursed stories. They're not cursed or anything, but they are the stories that were like, as I'm recording it, I just feel like
Yeah.
something is. I just feel like there's something listening. Like
Yeah.
you just kind of know. Like, you can't see it, but
Yeah.
you just have this really, really strong feeling that something is sitting right there listening to you as you record.
And that's why
So,
earlier
yeah.
I was asking you about that question with the producers and directors, is because when you're intaking that amount of content of that sort of content, I can
Yeah.
only imagine that psychologically it allows your mind to run further places because you intake a lot of that stuff. Like
Yep.
me, I don't try to intake that stuff because I know it's not good for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
not good for
That's
you
why I
either,
take breaks.
but exactly there has to be a hard divide where you say like,
Yeah.
okay, now this is seeping into like my personal life, and
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's like content
Right.
creation. It's fun. It's fiction. It's stories, but it's dark. It has its
There's
dark.
a line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I feel like it. I just feel like for me, it'd be a lot.
Yeah, it'd
like
be
if I was
overwhelming.
covering stuff like
It'll-
that,
yeah.
I'd be like,
Yeah.
at some point, I'm like, dude, am I tripping or did I just see something?
Yeah.
You know, because then you can tie it to so many stories you've heard. Like, well,
Yeah.
that person one time did say that in the woods they have seen this, and I am hearing that, so I'm putting one and one, two and two together. So,
Right,
but
right.
that's not too big of a problem for you. You know when to take your pause.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. Like, there was a story once where I was recording, and I swear to God, like, I saw a face come through like this.
Dang.
And then I stopped, and I just didn't record. I just didn't record for the rest of the day, and I waited until my husband got home, and I record. I record like way early in the morning. I cannot record at night.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
And so I do it in the morning, and this story was the only story that I had to take a pause. Like, I just couldn't record it because I was just like, there was just too much going on. And I can't tell if it's just my brain or if it was like something else. You would never know.
Yeah, you would never know. The brain is a mysterious
would never
place.
know.
The brain is very mysterious and works in
Yeah.
mysterious ways. Let me ask you a question. Ouija boards, you believe in them? Would you do one?
know.
Would you do one by yourself? Would you do one by yourself? Old
you
Saint,
have it?
old
Just
Saint.
kidding.
Yeah. Is that what we're doing today?
No,
Whip it
I
out?
just
Yeah.
because I always don't believe in them. But if you ask me to do one by myself in a
Right.
basement, I ain't doing it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah,
like,
I ain't doing it.
I don't believe it, but I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't
Nah, I
touch
wouldn't
Why
do it.
test it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
why
yeah.
test the
Why
water?
exactly?
Yeah, yeah.
Why open those floodgates?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
before you know it, you're like, dude, I don't know, man. Shit's been happening in my life, and you know what I mean. So, but I always think about the Ouija boards because I'm like, man, you're moving that.
Yeah.
But I'm always like, but that's not something I want to try.
Right, who
You know.
knows?
Okay. So along those subjects, like along that subject, you know, there are like these things that can help us like detect. What do you think about like ghost hunting and like?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, well, people will come
White
and they'll set up
noise
like
and-
complex,
yeah.
like, yeah. What do you think about stuff like that?
I do have a ghost box. So I was too chicken to use it. But the plan for the ghost box, I bought it like just a month
Explain
ago.
what a ghost
Yeah,
box
explain
is.
the ghost box.
So how ghost box works is it uses radio frequency to try to get voices through.
Ah.
And so they use radio frequency to make sentences or words or whatever. And I went to Alcatraz recently. I did a night tour there.
Yep,
and
saw that.
it was great. I enjoyed my time there. I learned so much. And
You
the
enjoyed
idea,
your time. Yeah,
Okay.
spending the night at Alcatraz. Yeah,
I was
all
there
right. You're not.
I was
Yeah,
there
you're
for the
sane. Yeah.
historical. I was there for
Yeah.
the history, and its history is really, really like, it's really interesting to me. But anyways, so I bought that ghost box to use there, but I chickened out. I was like, I'm not doing it.
Ooh. We should leave one here.
As they-
We
as
should
they-
leave it here.
Yeah, no, we
Should
should.
have.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Fun
hopefully,
surprise.
hopefully these spirits are also cleaners of cars and can give me some nice tips
Yeah.
and business
Yeah.
ideas. Yeah, no, that is scary. Do you get? I mean, okay, here's the question: you guys believe there's supernatural? I mean, I do because
know.
I do because there's no way on this earth I don't know everything. So to me, I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know everything. I don't have any evidence or proof, but I choose to believe that there is because, well, maybe there isn't. But to say that there's not, that's a strong statement too.
Yeah.
Maybe
I-
you know what I'm saying?
I do. I don't believe they're this like all evil thing. Maybe there are
right.
some evil.
I don't
evil
think it can throw me
entities.
against the wall. Like I don't think it
Yeah,
can throw me
yeah.
against the wall.
Okay,
But I
don't say that out
believe
loud.
that-
Just
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
Oh shit!
Now,
Here's-
we're opening a can
The
of
camera's
worms.
gonna be catching you some weird things.
but I just think that I can't discount it. That
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not possible.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because there's so much that we don't know.
Yeah.
That
For me, it's like on the same lines as aliens. Yeah, there's probably some life
right,
form out there.
Now we're going conspiracies.
Yeah. There's probably something out there, right? There's probably some spirits out there. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I just don't think it's this idea that what the movies make it of, like
Yeah.
they're
Right,
out there
right.
to harm us.
Yeah.
You know, I would like to think the ones around me are good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
At least that's what I
Right.
tell myself.
Yeah, because there's that too, right? Positive spiritual energy.
Yeah.
That's a
true.
better spin. That's
Yeah,
a healthier spin when we leave this podcast today.
Yeah.
We'll feel better.
That's true.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So we're coming up here on the hour. Is there anything else that you'd like to kind of tell people about your podcast or the things that you do, or is there future plans that are kind of big and up and coming? Are we kind of just in the cruising stage right now of your journey?
Yeah. I do want to start getting into okay, I say I'm scared, but I do this to myself. I'm just a really historical person too, and so I want to start actually going out to the field to just get
Ooh.
stories from there. I definitely don't want to do ghost hunting.
Yeah.
I'm not into ghost hunting. I do watch it, but I'm not into that. I'm more just like the historical part of it and
Okay.
the appreciation of those things that have happened there. Yeah. Otherwise,
Sorry, to
Go
add
for
on
it.
to that, have you had like a feature on where somebody else is telling their story?
not yet. I do
Okay.
want to get into more of that as well, so that's just not my voice all the time.
Okay.
I want other voices out there as well. Yeah.
Sorry to budge in there.
Oh, no worries. I was gonna say that so Raminusk and I, we always plan an event for content creators to come out, and so we have one coming up on May 25th. It's a Saturday, and we invite all content creators. We're more like we love our podcasters a lot more,
Yeah.
but essentially it's just a heap of whoever is a content creator out there because we could use each other.
And where will that be?
This is at Far East, just like last year. It's from 5 to 8, I want to say. We're still working out the details and kinks and things like that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
that's
because
the next thing.
the Hmong community for content creator has grown significantly, and it
has.
continues to grow with the generation younger than I. Like I've noticed, like it's almost normal to step into something like that now for a lot of the younger adults who have something they want to share, a story like that. So it is becoming. I appreciate that you guys do that. I went to the one last year, and it was cool to see like and find out that all these Hmong creators have different reasons why they do it, different philosophies behind why they're doing it, different genres of things they want to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just fun because it gives us the opportunity as ourselves being content creators to bring you along and then now share with the rest of the audience who you are. And it gives them the opportunity to log into your podcast and listen to those things and freak themselves out.
Yeah.
It's really just a place to connect.
Yeah.
I always joke that like people don't really come to me until Halloween where they start to like feature me. I'm just like, I'm tired. I'm booked.
Yeah. But yeah, shout out to you and Vince for doing that. Like, thank you for hosting that space. I didn't make it to the one last year.
No worries.
But you know, two made it out there. But like you guys are, the work that you guys are doing is really cool, and because you guys are essentially creating a space where everyone can kind of support each other, learn why everyone's doing what they're doing, and and support each other. Just because like you know you have the page now too, just among podcasters things, and I think there's like a lot of great conversations about how to go about podcasting and what are some maybe ethical dilemmas that people are coming across, you know, and we're kind of seeing that. And we didn't get a chance to talk too much about that, but yeah, we'd love to hear more at some point for sure.
Yeah, and the technical side of things too, that content creator, like we think about, like I always ask other content creator, like, hey, what camera are you using?
Exactly.
Yeah, what are you recording on?
Yeah.
I know.
Just things like that.
Yeah, my favorite thing is how do you deal with bad comments?
We were just talking about that earlier. It's mixed
It's mixed in the dark.
in the dark. MYX.
MYX.
I've been saying MYX.
Yeah, you've been saying minx.
Well, there's
Like
no
the
in there.
animal.
There's
You're a
no
farmer,
in-
so you're probably
Yeah,
thinking of the
there's no in
minx,
there. What
the
am I
animal.
doing? Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry,
mix,
third grade
MYX.
reading level. Mix
So
after dark.
mix after dark on which platforms?
Mix in the dark.
In the dark. Mix in the dark.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm kind of
Which
everywhere.
platforms?
YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, kind of wherever you listen to your podcast. Yeah.
You're killing it.
So if you're a person listening to this, make sure you definitely subscribe to her page and listen to her stories and give positive, constructive feedback. Not
Or just
no
give me
BS.
stories.
Yeah, or stories.
Yeah.
Give me stories.
Because I'm sure, it's a lot of filtering through, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
Yeah. Thank you for
Too
coming.
cool.
Yeah. I've had goosebumps the whole episode.
Yeah.
Here, so I should.
we have a podcast after you, and it's not scary. So
Wow.
I'm hoping that it's.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that it doesn't allow me to go home thinking scary thoughts.
Yeah.
Because those can get powerful
Yeah. 'Cause
sometimes.
it can consume your day.
It
Yeah.
can. It
Yeah.
can. Anything else?
No, thank you so much for coming. Like we
Thank you
said,
so
we
much for having
appreciate
me.
the work that you do connecting all the podcasters, and then also Mix After Dark.
Mix in the
Mix
dark.
in the dark, bro. Yeah. No worries.
right.
All right, guys, we gotta. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for coming by. Thank you for giving us a part of your morning to come share your story, kind of your creative process and different stories you've heard, and also congratulations for putting in effort over the last 4 years, because
Yes, thank you.
consistency is hard.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's not easy.
Consistency is probably the hardest part that most of us start and never continue.
Yeah.
Because that, we always say the beginning is easy because you're rolling off passion.
Yeah.
And then after a little bit, it's passion / work after a
They were
while.
all top 5%. I saw that episode.
Oh yeah. You,
I love
you
it.
make it past 10 episodes. You're in the
Yeah.
top like
That's- yeah,
10%
there you
of
go.
podcasters.
Is it 10%?
Yeah.
There you
Something
go.
Like top 1% or
Sure.
something like
Oh,
that.
sure.
Yeah.
We are successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We made it. We
Yeah.
made it.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
till the next episode, and make sure you log in and watch all our stuff because viewership helps.
All right. One more time. Mix in the dark.
Yes.
There we
Mix
go.
in
We
there,
got it. We got
MYX.
it.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Thanks for
Yeah.
watching.